welcome to the Ben Cotton Podcast. This is Story Time. Brief stories from different people's lives, including my own. Today I'm going to talk about February 5th, 2014, when I had a heart attack and how God met me in that time. So in 2014, I was sitting in my bedroom in my easy chair. I had just eaten some delicious chili that my brother had made and was preparing for a sermon. About 2 days later, on a Sunday morning, I don't remember what day of the week it was. It's the end of the week, maybe Thursday or Friday, and I was doing sermon prep like I always do. I was reading Matthew chapter 28, the Great Commission, which if you've been in church long, you've heard that verse a million times, I'm sure. Preparing a sermon and just felt what I thought was heartburn right in the center of my chest. Just sort of a burning sensation, a tightness, and I just thought it was the chili. And that feeling just kept growing and getting bigger and bigger in my chest to where I realized this is not heartburn. I thought maybe this is stress or something, and it just kept growing and widening, expanding in my chest, and then that old telltale sign, it moved from my chest to my left arm and went right down the inside of my left arm, and I knew something was wrong. And to be honest, I had the strangest, weirdest reaction at the time, which maybe if you've been through something like this, it won't seem that strange, but I was in my bedroom, and the only person home other than me was my daughter, my oldest daughter. She was downstairs, and I went to the bedroom door and I closed it and locked it and laid down on the bed. I know that might seem weird to you, but it completely freaked me out. And my first instinct was to lay down on the bed and just hide from it. I was so deeply afraid in that moment. It wasn't even just wanting to protect my daughter from the trauma of seeing her father having a heart attack. It was fear. Maybe you felt that kind of fear before. Because see, I think everybody's boogeyman eventually comes and knocks on your door, and that's what was happening to me. This is the thing I had been afraid of maybe not my entire life, but most of my life. When I was in middle school, I found out that I had some of the same genetic physical weaknesses that my mother and her parents had. High cholesterol that was not even really diet related. It was just, it's a chronic problem of high cholesterol. The body just doesn't deal with cholesterol the way other people do. And I had this fear of being sick. That was my boogeyman. My boogeyman was a serious physical illness that I would have to live with. Probably heart related. And here I am, serving God, doing all the right things, at least according to me. And my boogeyman comes knocking on my door, and it just freaked me out. So my solution was to just close the door and lock it and hide and hope it went away. Of course it didn't. After maybe less than a minute, I think, of laying on the bed, having a heart attack with the door closed and locked, I just sort of shook myself and realized what I was doing. And went over, opened the door, went downstairs, told my daughter, I think I'm having a heart attack, and we called 911 together. So the paramedics showed up a short time later, and by the time they got there, the heart attack seemed to have just stopped, and I wasn't experiencing any of those symptoms anymore, and they weren't even really sure I had a heart attack. But after a bunch of talking and with the symptoms, obviously there was something going on, so we decided to ride on into the hospital. Got to the hospital, waited a long time, ran some tests, found out, yeah, sure enough, I had a heart attack. And when the doctor walked in and told me, you did have a heart attack, it was like a ton of bricks just got dropped on my back. I just felt devastated. It was the weirdest feeling. Like my soul just got 1,000 pounds heavier. I felt like my life was over in that moment. That's the way it felt. It turns out they had to transport me from that hospital to a different one. I don't remember now if it was because they were full or if they didn't have anybody on the floor at the time that could look at me, a cardiologist. So I can't remember now what the reason was, but they transported me to a different hospital. So I'm on the gurney and they put me in another ambulance to take me to this other hospital, and I'm sitting there, and there's a paramedic who was sitting there with me in the ambulance, and he began to talk to me about God. Just openly, just without asking me what I do for a living or if I'm a Christian or anything, just started talking. And he started just, for lack of a better word, preaching to me about the goodness and the faithfulness of God. And it was so just strange and out of nowhere that I remember just looking at him and not being able to respond, because in my head, I'm freaking out. I feel like I've been given a death sentence. And it was this powerful, emotional thing going on inside of me while this man is sitting 3 feet away from me in a paramedic's uniform, preaching a sermon to me practically about the goodness and faithfulness of God. And I don't even remember anything that he said other than that was the content of what he was telling me. And he talked to me. He did this all the way from the hospital to the other hospitals, about 30 minutes. Never stopped. No one stopped him. He just kept going and going and going. And I remember in my head hearing one part of the verse that I was reading and studying and prepping with as I was sitting there preparing for my sermon right as my heart attack happened. I want to read it to you. It's right here at the end of Matthew 28. Matthew 28, 19 through 20, and I'll tell you the part that I remember. It says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold," here it is, "I am with you always to the end of the age." I am with you always. And that little statement, that refrain began to repeat in my head like a broken record. As this man was preaching to me, just speaking right into my heart, as if God had actually put him there. What I heard, I don't know what he said, but what I heard over and over and over again is that phrase, "I will be with you to the end of the age. I am with you always, always, always," over and over again. It was as if God himself was holding me together in that moment. And so the question, I guess, is, or one of the questions is, who is your boogeyman? We've all got a different one, I guess. Is it illness like me, or cancer, death, failure, losing your mind, being alone, the rejection of your children, losing your job, losing the approval of others? What is it? Think about that. Call it by name. Name it. Look at it. Face it for what it is. Because this is the thing that competes most heavily for the place of preeminence in your heart. I know it has always been for me. And so long as that fear lurks in the dark, it kind of owns you, doesn't it? Mine certainly owned me for a lot of years. And then God brought my boogeyman right into my bedroom and said, "Look at it." And as I stared down my boogeyman, or I guess I should say, as my boogeyman stared me down, God sent some paramedic, I don't remember his name, I barely remember his face, to preach to me in an ambulance as my boogeyman stared me down, and all I could hear was Jesus saying, "Behold, I am with you always." And this is not just true for me. This is true for you. If you're a follower of Jesus, he says to you, as your boogeyman comes in your bedroom, "I'm with you right now. I'm with you right in the thick of it, right in the middle of facing down your worst fear. In your worst nightmare moment, I am with you." And that's God's answer to suffering, isn't it? He doesn't just say, hey, here's what you should do. I'm going to help you escape your pain, help you escape your difficulty. He says, he does what he did with me. And he says, hey, I'm with you. And he walks through it with you. He carries you through it. So when you cry out to God like I did in that moment, and you say, why is this happening to me? Why are you doing that? Why are you allowing this to happen to me? Woe is me. His answer is almost always not an answer to that question. His answer is to simply give you himself. So one question I think is helpful, has been helpful to me, is to ask the question, where is Jesus? Where is he right now? Where's he located? He's with me. By his Spirit, he is with me, even in my darkest moment. And that's what I discovered there in that ambulance. Now, to tell you the rest of the story, just so you're not wondering, is that I did end up having a heart attack. It was a minor heart attack, if there is a such thing. I was 39 years old when I had that heart attack. 39 years old, and it was a major wake-up call for me. My health has changed dramatically. I still have a long way to go. I don't feel like I have arrived in that department by any means. I still have a lot of weight to lose and that sort of thing. But I have this weird, one of the arteries that goes into my heart has a branch in it that is really small and prone to blockage, and it had blocked up. I didn't even know it was there. And so in that respect, that little heart attack not only confronted something in my heart that needed to be confronted so that I could walk in more freedom in my relationship with God, but it also really probably saved my life, or at least extended it for a while longer, because it could have gone far worse than it did. So Jesus will conquer your fear, not by simply giving you words of encouragement, which is part of it, I'm sure. But Jesus conquers your fear by saying, I am with you in the middle of your darkest moment. That's what my story means to me anyway.